So the breaking news is that the National Association of Realtors has settled a big lawsuit. So welcome to the black hole of real estate. We're going to do our best to put a shining light on this in a way that makes sense to you and gives you the information that you need today. So NAR settles a big lawsuit. There's over $418 million that's going to get handed out over the next 4 years from NAR to the folks that won the lawsuit. So there you go. There's a lot of money going out of the hands of the real estate industry, National Association of Realtors specifically, for people said they were harmed due to price fixing and bad seller practices. Now, interestingly enough, we're going to see that the NAR is going to admit no wrongdoing, and they're going to make some changes to compensation disclosures by not placing it in the MLS and some other things that are going to make it interesting, to say the least, how real estate will be conducted in the future. Now, there's talk that this is all going to shake down, let's use that word, in July. And we'll see if that's when it really starts to happen. But I think you're already feeling tremors throughout the industry. And it's going to get dicey for some. I believe that enough agents were on the fringe of quitting or going out of business. And this is going to push them even more, probably accelerate those heading for the exits in a much quicker way. If they weren't selling many properties before this hit, the fear and the complication of this is going to push the people beyond the brink. What I would tell you is that I do believe this. I think there's a lot of consumers that would be willing to still pay for the services of a real estate agent, whether they're willing to pay for the listing agent, the buyer side, so to speak, in the way that was shared traditionally. That remains to be seen, but I think there's a segment that will absolutely want that service. I believe that there will be a shift in the menu of items that are available, a la carte perhaps, for real estate services might increase. There's a number of systems out there that have been there for years where a consumer could pay a company just to put the property on the multiple listing service in their local area. Just pay that fee and be done with it. Limited service, I think, is what it would be. I think that someone might offer limited service or some service based on a menu of what you're willing to pay and what services that you actually want. But that's been available for years as well. What I'm trying to put my head around is that's always been available to do these things. So the big changes in the industry everybody's speaking of, from an agent perspective, a commission has always been with the agent/brokerage we're willing to agree upon with the person selling the home. So whatever percent that was, or flat fee, that's always been an available option. So for agents, what do we do next? Well, that menu has always existed. Now, if you're only using just a small portion of it, then it would absolutely be time to learn the rest of the menu. You can probably have commissions from 0 up to 99.9%. Let's just call it 100%. It's always been negotiable. And the services in exchange for the compensation has always been negotiable. So nothing's changed. Except maybe everything, because now we can't state, at least it appears this way, in a multiple listing service with the compensation would be for the brokerage that brings the buyer. So it looks like most of the cards be held by the listing agent, listing brokerage as far as the compensation piece. And it might be that those working with the buyer will have to have a separate agreement, a separate contract, if you will, to be compensated by the buyer. Okay, so what would that look like? Well, I don't know. You pick the fictitious number of commission that the seller is going to pay to the listing agent, and then you select the fictitious amount of commission paid to the buyer's agent for the services rendered, help them purchase. I mean, that's really what's been going on. It's just the seller used to pay for it all. Now, I think this is going to be a zero-sum gain, because if the seller is paying just a listing agent and the buyer has to pay the buyer's agent Would it make sense that the offer would be lower to take into account that the seller is no longer paying the whole commissions? I think that's going to happen. I also believe that you will see a number of situations where the seller is willing to give a credit to the buyer at closing to help pay for the services of their agent in much the same way that a seller used to give a credit, or can still give a credit, to the buyer to help pay for closing costs. Now, it might get complicated when the credit is supposed to be used for closing costs and to pay the agent. Those properties still have to appraise for the top line value, so will that skew some appraisals, make it a little more difficult? Absolutely. There's going to be change. There's going to be an effect from this. So whether you think that one side was right and the other was wrong, or vice versa, it really doesn't matter, because it's in motion right now. And it's what you do next that's going to make all the difference. So if you're an agent and you spend the next 6 months crying the blues and this is bad and this should never have happened and blah, 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 we always did it this way. Hey, last time I checked, every time a cell phone comes out, it pretty much makes the one before it somewhat obsolete. Same with TVs, same with computers, same with so many things. So real estate, you're just having your turn, your industry. What many other industries are going through right now. Look at the retail business. Do you think that shopping malls were affected by Amazon? Hello? I think the same thing has happened with online car shopping and travel purchases, and anything that we can purchase off the phone is impacting other businesses. So real estate, you don't get to be unique anymore. You are now affected by the massive change in technology and consumer wants and needs. This is going to happen because change is inevitable, and change is ever evolving in every industry. And that's likely to continue. We don't see a lot of record albums or cassette tapes or 8-track tapes anymore. It's mostly digital downloads, right? Every industry has felt it in some way, shape, or form. But this is a seismic shift for the real estate industry. It's going to change habits. It's going to change long-standing traditional methods of selling homes ever so slightly. There will be a compensation involved. It might look a little bit different. It could be less. Most industries are finding costs are rising and margins are getting weakened, so that's similar and not unexpected. Now, the good news is that there's plenty of resources in the industry, including this podcast, that are going to bring it to you straight and not get caught in the minutia of who did it and why did it and who said this. Just stop that. But I've already given you a couple of ways that this is going to change in the industry, the way the compensation moves. So look for more credits. Absolutely. Look for menus of services. Choice is good for consumers. It might just be good for the real estate business. I do believe the level of professionalism will absolutely ratchet up, in that I believe that fundamentals, which are lacking in most industries, including real estate, fundamentals will be ratcheted up, and service and accountability and responsibility and timeliness all going to increase. So I do believe that there will be an overall better product and experience for those buying and selling properties. And I'm wondering if there is enough increase there to overcome the pain involved in how business will be conducted in the future. If you're a buyer and you have a limited budget and barely have enough for a down payment and you need help with closing costs and you feel that you need to hire a strong negotiator as an agent to represent you and somebody who's super knowledgeable, that may be more money than you actually have to accomplish that. And if there's not a way to get enough credits and have the property appraised, this could actually lock some people out of a home purchase. And I'll say this with the only way I know how to say it is directly. Just because an attorney or a doctor or a CPA is cheaper doesn't necessarily mean that you get the same level of service by the one that costs more. No more than paying the most for any one of those people in any of those professions guarantees you got the best person. There will be overcharging and undercharging in every industry. It'll be up to the consumer, who these days are heavily reliant on things like online reviews and borrowed, beliefs in past experiences with friends who also use a certain agent or person or brokerage in the industry to help them. Those are going to be super important. With less agents, there'll be less competition on the agents, but there may be less to choose from. It bears going deep on this consistently over the next several podcast episodes to interwind what exactly is going on. This is likely to change slowly and quickly at the same time. Slowly, because people will be hesitant to opt in or continue down a path because it's new. And quickly, because those that change quickly are not necessarily the ones that guess right, but someone's going to go out there and make a really bold move. Cross their fingers it's the right strategy. And the early adopter in this is likely to have a better chance long term because they'll have had more reps and more chances to get it right. If they're pretty close on the model, let's say they're 80% of the way, the model they choose to move forward with is workable and viable, they'll have more time to dial it in to get closer to 100%. So early adoption is likely to be key, but being first isn't necessarily ideal. Sometimes the second person up the mountain actually gets to see a little bit of what the first person struggled through and gets a little bit faster, but not necessarily be the 1,000,000th person to go through and really miss the most of a massive opportunity. So NAR, you made a decision today that you believe is in the best interests of all the agents. I'll let the agents chime in with comments if they actually feel it was their best interest that were served across all agents, or was there some other thing on the agenda, is what I would say. And then the last thing I'm just going to finish up with right now is as we walk down the road from this, it's not unnoticed by me the number of people at NAR that have either been forced out or resigned or supposedly blackmailed, or maybe they were. I've also seen massive leadership swings across all the big block companies. President stepped out of KW this week, so there's just a lot going on right now. And I'm not sure if those people were shoved out or just decided they did not want to continue in this space. We'll wait for their book to come out and see what the real reason is why they made these moves. But in the meantime, for those of us that are still in it and fully engaged, lock arms, lock in. It doesn't have to be a scary, bumpy ride, but it's definitely uncharted waters. It's going to be different. There's going to be some pain along the way. And on the other side of that, there's going to be some big winners among those that are currently in the industry that stick it out. So we'll be watching. Hey, this is Ron Wysakarski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.